Hey guys, Dark Humility here. Today, we're going to go over the brand new patch 2.6 notes, final, season 3 ladder. These are coming out, of course, on February 15th. The ladder itself will be February 16th, Thursday, 5 p.m. PT, which is a different time for everybody else. Hope you guys will join us in our journey. I'm going to be playing hardcore with the hardcore community, and we're going to be going hard with multiple teams on both hardcore and softcore. Alright, today we're going to be going over the patch notes for patch 2.6. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what I personally think about all this, and hopefully you guys are as hyped as I am. These are really sick changes, and I feel like they actually listened to Maxwell, the community, and everyone else, and they did a lot of very important changes. That being said, there's still a lot more changes. I made a video called Top 10 Ways to Improve D2R. This patch does address some of those, but it doesn't address all of them. And of course, if you guys want more ways that I think they could improve the game, definitely check that out. Alright, so first things first, there's the date, like I said, February 16th, 5 p.m. Of course, we're still going to have 4 separate ladder seasons. They warn you about leaving items in those temporary shared stashes from Season 1. Those will get deleted in Season 3 if you leave them in there, so make sure to put them into the normal shared stash on non-ladder. Cool. Alright, and then of course the 8 new rune words. Let's talk about the changes first to the 8 new rune words. So Bulwark is receiving no changes. That's no surprise to me, and it was already a super solid rune word. When it came to an early game damage reduction solution for the mercenary or physical builds as well to make them tankier and more likely to survive. With runes you can just get from Nightmare Countess. So to me that's not really much of a surprise. It's like a mini Vampire Gaze that has similar stats. So it's already pretty damn strong. Didn't have to change it, didn't have to do nothing. Here! I really like this change. This item really had maybe a couple of very niche uses, like maybe Lilith and Dario. But by doing this, there's actually some more incentive to perhaps do this. Cleansing Aura, of course, will reduce curse duration, so that's actually kind of nice. You can have a way of getting some curse duration reduction. And now you really don't fear poison at all, and you can also give that effect to other people in the group as well by chucking that on a mercenary. So that's a really nice group play helmet, and that's really sick. And once again, you can get those runes from Nightmare Countess. So yeah, I think that's a really, really nice change to cure. I really like that a lot. And I'm really glad they made those changes, absolutely. Let's go over Ground. Ground, they didn't change it at all, but once again, thematically there's not really much they could have added to it. It made sense to put something like Cleansing and Cure. This thing is already an insane early game option, in my opinion, for like teleporting Bale without dying. It already opens up a lot of potential options for like teleporting Hell, Bale, and whatnot. I'm just making it possible to do so. And once again, it's just Nightmare Countess runes, so no surprise that they didn't change that as well. There's already a lot of solid use cases for this. And remember, these can all be used in combinations with Sunder Charms as well to mitigate their effects, which is how I think they were intended. Yeah, I mean, Light Res and Light Absorb against Souls early game is pretty sick, so I don't really have a problem with that rune word. Once again, these are very cheap rune words that require just Nightmare Countess. Hearth, I really like that change, that addition there that cannot be frozen. Thematically, it makes a lot of sense that if you're going to get all this Cold Absorb and Cold Resist, that you should also not have to worry about being frozen. It's just like an anti-cold helmet. Being frozen and dealing with lots of cold damage is nice. This also means that there might be some select use cases where you might even want to use it on a mercenary as well. I don't know, I kind of like it. It's pretty nice. It adds to the immersion for sure. It's just like an anti-cold helmet if you're ever worried about any kind of cold damage. I would definitely think this is probably the helm that's still going to get used the least, but it might get used more than I think because, you know, there's a lot of cold Sorcs out there, and in general, they have to try to counter those Sunder Charms somehow, and that's pretty solid. Temper Fire. still good. It was already a solid case, I think, for Chaos on the Mercenary, Travancore on the Mercenary for yourself to counter Sunder Charms. It's already going to be really solid against things like Venom Lords. I don't really think there's much of a problem to this at all. Didn't really have to change it. And now into the 3 big new ones. Now, they changed these rune words a lot, so they took a lot of very good feedback, and I personally really like all these changes. I feel like they open up a lot more options without making these rune words insanely annoying, personally. I was not a huge fan of pre-buffing everything. I mean, there's already pre-buff in the game, but like when you have so many pre-buff items for everything, including Ubers, it's like kind of overwhelming. I don't really think that maybe more pre-buff needs to be added into the game. That being said, they still can be used for pre-buff, and they're no longer like super dominant for pre-buff. So they're actually they're used for their intended purposes, and they have good intended purposes. Specifically, when I mention that, I talk about hustle and metamorphosis. But yeah, anyway, the hustle armor way stronger than it was before. So the hustle armor was kind of junk, honestly. I really wouldn't have thought of many cases where you would actually want to use that. Now though, with a huge amount of faster run walk, you're gonna go a lot faster, especially Vigor Aura. It's gonna be pretty huge. Might even make it to where with like enough fast run walk buff from like Vigor or something like I mentioned, that you might be able to keep up with some slower teleport. So that's kind of nice. That's pretty neat. Increased attack speed. I mean, obviously it's going to be hard to teleport over walls and stuff, but I mean, there's still items that teleport charges, teleport stages and whatnot. I still wouldn't mind like some kind of early game teleport option that wasn't super strong, but if they don't want to do that, I guess it's not too bad. The next thing they did was attack speed. So now the attack speed kind of competes a little bit with treachery, while not exceeding treachery. It does mean treachery is still going to make you have a lot more defensive stats, potentially, including the mercenary. But now there's something that's a lot easier to get and doesn't require a lem rune. So the hustle armor is also going to be used for a mercenary as well in a lot of cases, not just yourself. So it'll be used for you. The mercenary can get a lot of attack speed as well, which is really, really good. You can also, and then of course there's also the FHR component, which is similar to treachery once again, but with all its faster run walk. And it even gives all res, so not all the res that treachery would give when faded, but this is more consistent all res that doesn't depend on being faded. So I compare this a lot to treachery because there's a lot of similarities, but all resistances 10 is pretty sick. That's good. I feel like having some more defensive capability on this item definitely makes it more usable. And then, of course, something else that makes it really huge is +6 to evade. If anyone knows how broken the dodge, avoid, and evade skills are on the Xan, that's going to be pretty massive. Means that you're definitely going to be able to not take nearly as much damage in a lot of situations. From certain monsters, they're just not going to hit you, and you're just going to totally negate the damage. So, for a melee build, this is really good for getting up close and for keeping up. I'd say it's really solid. I'd say these stats might even be overkill for the runes now, but I mean, at least it justifies the use of the co-rune, which is pretty huge. And then I think for mercenaries now, you also have a solid mercenary armor as well that makes the mercenary fairly tanky and be able to leech and attack faster as well. So that's the armor's looking really sick. What's up, Pocket? How you doing? The hustle weapon. So this is where they kind of gutted some of the pre-buff potential. It's only level 1 burst of speed on striking instead of level 9. I kind of like that because I don't really like pre-buffing absolutely everything. Now, like, you wouldn't pre-buff everything on it because it wouldn't be worth it anymore. However, strafe still procs it very reliably. And that would mean that having a hustle on swap on any kind of boson, including elemental boson, and having 1 point strafe or all points strafe if you're a strafe zone, means you can get higher attack speed breakpoints, and that can make you a lot stronger. So it still has one really prominent use case of pre-buff. I think it could also be justified to maybe be put on like a throw barb or something, You could probably also pre-buff it using 2 hustles on swap, and that would still also be pretty decent, using Frenzy to pre-buff that as well. So I think Frenzy and Strafe could still pre-buff it, and you'd get some decent benefit out of that. But it's no longer a case where every single build that has attack speed wants to pre-buff it anymore. And instead of like 3 minutes and 40 seconds, I think it's like around like 2 minutes now. So it's not like something you're gonna want like on every build. It's not gonna be worth it spending that time to proc. But when you have abilities like Frenzy and Strafe that proc things like this very quickly, it's gonna be pretty solid. That being said, though, it's a solid buff that can be used on a lot of melee builds now, especially with the increase in enhanced damage. There's a lot of melee builds that might want to make this for increased attack speed and movement speed, and the level 1 Fanaticism aura on it as well, which will also increase your damage and attack speed on top of that. So for slower builds like things like shapeshifting builds, this seems like a pretty solid option for early game as well. Another thing to note is because you can make a hustle in any weapon, just like you can make it in any armor, that also means you could put it in something like a spear or a polearm, which means that you can now get Fanaticism aura on top of Might aura, or Fanaticism aura on top of Blessed Aim, or even just Fanaticism aura on top of Defiance or Prayer or whatever on an Act 2 Mercenary. And you can actually hit 2 auras that aren't just meditation and another aura early game without breaking the bank. Once again, it's only Shale Co-Eld, and that also means that those 3-socketed polearms will actually see a lot more use because there's already a lot of rune words for 4 and 5-socketed polearms. So definitely make use of those early game. I definitely see melee builds benefiting a lot from this weapon directly, and from the Mercenary getting some extra auras. That burst of speed proc on the Mercenary too will also make him attack insanely fast as well. So that's going to be a great Mercenary weapon, absolutely. Definitely make sure to do that. 40 to 50% evade on top of 75% block and defense chance not to be hit. Yeah, honestly, it's going to make melee builds insanely tanky. I really like this armor. I think maybe it's too cheap for what it does now, but that's okay. I think it definitely makes melee builds a lot more, or just builds that can't have teleport, a lot more competitive in the early game. So they're definitely getting some really big changes there. Don't get me wrong, though. I would still be full in favor of some kind of replenishing teleport charges or +1 to teleport on some early game item, because I feel like that would just make things a lot easier, but it's not the worst idea in the world. If they feel like thematically that doesn't really make sense, they can at least have that. Alright, Mosaic. Mosaic, this is the big one. This is the big one. So Hustle, in my opinion, both versions are better, and they're more thematic, and they're more useful in situations where you'd actually want to use them. However, Mosaic is insane. This is the biggest change in patch 2.6 in my opinion, period. 50% chance, not 25% finishing moves or not consume charges. And when a finisher is executed, it now refreshes the expiration timer of the whole stack of charges. This means that if you have 2 of them, you have 100% chance for finishing moves to not consume charges. And it means that all you have to do is use finishers to maintain your charges every 14 seconds. What this means is that you can just go around using finishers constantly, one after the other. Now, yes, in order to make a strong martial sin, you're going to need not just one of these in some cases, but you'll need 2 of them in many cases. And that's going to be really solid. Now, I will tell you from Maxwell testing on this that this is absolutely insane. If you use it on Phoenix Strike and you charge up all of your charge up skills, including Cobra Strike, and you just have all these balls spinning around you, you go around and just use Phoenix Strike finisher, and you have Infinity and double Mosaics and everything, you'll destroy Player's 8. And there'll be no monster that can ever stand up against you whatsoever. It's going to turn Phoenix Strike into an S tier build. As strong as Lightning Fury. This is not a joke. This is not a drill. As strong as Lightning Fury. No joke. I have seen it with my own eyes. It will be just as strong as Lightning Fury in P8 with a full build. You need 2 Mosaics, Infinity, Enigma, but once you have all that, it's going to smash. Absolutely. The other thing to keep in mind is that things like Claws of Thunder will be almost as strong as well, because you'll be able to retain your charges and constantly proc billions of Novas. So there's other things you can do as well. Dragon Tail is also going to be super strong as well in a lot of these cases as well. So you're going to just, and so will Dragon Talon with Tiger Strike. You're going to see a lot of really cool uses with this claw. Also, all these percent damage are added to it as well. As we'll see further down in the patch notes, the percent elemental damage now applies to martial abilities properly, which means it will actually get its proper damage. They also changed the rune out, so be careful when making this. It is no longer Mao Gol Fool, it is Mao Gol Am, and they gave you some lifesteal as well. So, it also has Prevent Monster Heal, which is kind of nuts, because that means you could also use this to destroy Diablo clone. So there's almost nothing you can't do with this thing, and honestly with just 2 mid-high runes, it's not too bad, man. It's not too bad, and you're going to need like 2 of those. Now obviously, ideally you'd put these in fast claws, like Runic Talons, Feral Claws, things like that with +3 to the skill that you're trying to boost, like Phoenix Strike or Claws of Thunder or whatever it is. But overall, Martial Sins are going to be insanely powerful in Season 2.6. Putting them at the very top of the tier list and making the Assassin a beast. So definitely look out for those, and it's definitely one of the more hype things in these patch notes. I would say the original 25% didn't make it too very strong, still kind of lackluster, but 50% each, man, with 100% total when you have 2 of them. Even with just one 50% one now, it's going to retain charges really well, so make sure to try out all the combinations of claws you can. Metamorphosis. Holy moly! So Metamorphosis is pretty much the same as the other video that I went over when I went over all the rune words, but I really like this change. So now the pre-buff of Crushing Blow is no longer a pre-buff. I like that it's now, you know, not attached to any of the marks, and so now you actually have to use Metamorphosis to make use of it. It is now, as it should be, a shape-shifting helm, and of course if you transform them both into a wolf, into a bear on shape-shifting builds now, you can get both marks, and all you have to do is hit them once with one of the forms and then use the other form as your primary form, and you're going to do a ton of damage. That's going to be really sick. Definitely look out for that. Definitely pumped for some awesome shape-shifting builds. Shape-shifting felt really strong with some of these marks, and it felt really effective. That being said, I mean, there's still not the fastest clears in the game. We're not talking about turning martial builds into Lightning Fury Amazons like Mosaic does, but with Metamorphosis, we're still talking about making these builds so much more solid, and they feel just a lot better. So things like Maul Druid and Fury Druid are going to feel a lot better. Things like Rabies are still going to be crap, but that's okay. Alright. And then, they talk about why they made these changes here. Some of those things I kind of went over. Alright, in single player, it looks like all non-classic game modes now, Sundering Charms can now drop in all modes, which is cool. They also made it to where 2.4 rune words are on non-ladder now, so you can make them there. And they also made it to where you can do all of those set upgrading things, recipes on non-ladder as well. So that's good. That's nice. Patch 2.6 rune words will be ladder only, so keep that in mind. Alright. Next up here, yeah, so this is just telling you when it's going to go live. February 15th, 10 a.m. PT, that's when the patch will go live, not the ladder. Alright, so next up is Terror Zone changes. These are all very good changes. I still think there's a couple of things that I would personally do, but I'll talk about those here in a second. Basically, the main problem with some Terror Zones is they're either too small, which meant that, you're just constantly making games and it just felt like it was over as soon as you loaded into the game. Just kind of lame. And you know, things like dark wood, adding an underground passage. It's exactly what I would do. Combining terror zones, adding new areas. They're adding a new one here, Black Marsh Hole. I like that. That's a solid one. I mean, they already got Forgotten Tower in that areas, which has a lot of levels. May as well add the marsh and the hole on top of that. Adding in barracks to the jail. Jail is already kind of sizable, but that just makes it even better. So that's a nice terror zone now. And the only thing I think they're kind of missing here now in Act 1, I wouldn't say that all of these are great terror zones necessarily still, but at least they're thematic and they're all combined correctly, is I would combine Tristram and Stony Field. These two are insanely small still, and they still kind of have that feeling of just being finished as soon as they begin. So I kind of would like to see that if they do that at some point. Tristram and Stonyfield being combined, but besides that, it's looking really good now. Act 2, Far Oasis. I would add Maggot Lair back in like they had in one of the PTRs just as an option so that Far Oasis isn't super small. I feel like they can still make that one bigger. Besides that, the rest of them are solid. I really love that they put in Ancient Tunnels. This actually kind of upset me that Ancient Tunnels is left out. Because I was like, Ancient Tunnels is a solid area with lots of elite packs. And it's a solid iconic level 85 area. So putting that in, that's really good. I also don't mind, you know, having maybe like Palace Cellar and Harem as well. All the Palace Cellar levels and Harem being a Terra Zone. That would also not be super bad either. Once we get to Act 3, Great Marsh makes sense. It's a really big area with a lot of elite packs, so I mean that's not a bad one to include. Also, actually gives people a reason to run it and get the waypoint for it. And then of course, we have some of these other Terror Zones, which aren't amazing, but I mean they're solid because of drops. Things like Durance and Travancore. I mean they can be good for drops. Kuros Sewers was just absolute crap, and you just died to dolls and shit, and the mobility in that area is super huge too, with like no density and only a few elite packs. This area is absolute boo-boo, so they actually got rid of it. So I'm good with that 100%. You know, I ran with some good players this last season, and not even they wanted to touch this place, and because it just wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. Even on softcore, I'd imagine it wouldn't be worth it. It's just bad. I don't cry a single tear for the loss of Kuros Sewers. I think replacing that with Great Marsh is perfectly fine. Of course, you know, it's the same thing like, you know, Swampy Pit. I could also imagine people wouldn't want to do that one. Even Swampy Pit was better than Kuros Sewers, though, or would be, because it has more elite packs and it just has more density. That's just how bad Kuros Sewers is. It's just huge and unwieldy. It's just really bad. Don't care that they got rid of that. Act 4 ones are already solid. Act 5, I really like these changes. Frigid Highlands, Bloody Foothills, and Abaddon being combined. Frigid Highlands is already a decent Terror Zone. Bloody Foothills is pretty bad. Adding in the red portal area makes a lot of sense. I think that's going to be a pretty solid Terror Zone that actually lasts a pretty good amount of time. This makes a lot of sense. I have no idea why they left Drifter Cavern out from Glacial Trail when they had Icy Cellar for Ancient Sway. And then they also had Frozen River for Crystalline, so that's good, and it also makes that Terror Zone a lot better. And then Area Plateau and Pit of Acheron, that's definitely what they needed to do to make Area Plateau decent. That's still going to be a really rough Terror Zone because Pit of Acheron is freaking really stupid. But at least there's more elite packs and there's more things to kill. So that's really cool. And yeah, overall, I really like these Terror Zone changes. Like I said, there's maybe like one Terror Zone I would still add in Act 2. I would add Maggot Lair to Far Oasis. In Act 1, I would still combine Tristram and Stony Field. But besides that, they cleaned up a lot of the problems with a lot of the Terror Zones. So I definitely look forward to a better Terror Zone rotation in patch 2.6. Alright. Alright, and then next, of course, we have quality of life updates and bug fixes. This is solid stuff, of course. Alright, so this is where some of the other hype is as well. So very good stuff coming in here. Apparently, Flickering Flame. Apparently, passive auras from another player or mercenary no longer remove passive bonuses granted by the same skill. Yeah, apparently it would just like overwrite other abilities. That was kind of annoying. So that's good they fixed that. The Assassin, though, this one's really hype. So once again, the Assassin is actually getting some serious love in patch 2.6. Not only are we getting insanely strong martial builds with Mosaic, we're also getting traps benefiting from -% to enemy resistance, which also gives them an easier path to those martial builds with early game farming. Things like Flickering Flame will now, the negative res will work on Wake of Fire. Things like Crescent Moon will work on lightning traps. Wake of Fire is going to be really solid early game now in cows. I can definitely see that. So trap skills are definitely looking to be really sick. And yeah, all negative res from everything now. So that means the Sunder Charms will actually be effective on traps and will actually do something for trap sins besides just the Conviction Aura and the Sunder Charm. Yeah, that's how bad we were in a state with the Assassins last season. It was awful. Every other class, the negative res worked and the Sunder Charms are effective, and then on the traps, and they pretty much got nothing except for Fire Blast, which isn't a very dominant ability to begin with. So you can imagine. It already kind of sucks that traps have a delay on them, so like people would just go around killing shit, and trapsins basically did nothing. Now they actually do something though. As you can see here, in line with the Mosaics, they also fixed an issue where the missiles created from martial arts charges would not benefit of +% to elemental skill damage modifiers. So that includes things like % damage from Griffins or from 2020 shields and things like that. So now Martial Sins will also be benefiting. This is why Martial got crazy good stuff here. And Assassin traps are looking really solid, and there's a lot more ways to get that negative enemy res and to actually have the Sunder Charms break immunities and make trap sins really strong. Yeah, Phoenix with traps, Phoenix Shield, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff coming out here. Griffins, negative enemy res, there's just a lot of negative enemy res cases now that the traps are going to benefit from. Alright, this one definitely is one of my favorite changes. Strafe Zon's always been one of my favorite Amazons. I was really hyped in patch 2.4 when they said they were buffing Strafe, but for 2 patches now, or for 2 seasons, it was bugged, so the change never actually came through. It was still doing only 75% weapon damage, and Strafe is still kind of shit because of that. Now that's not going to be the case. So they're fixing it. Pretty sick, right? Definitely pretty sick. And so Strafe is going to be really, really strong. I wouldn't be surprised if it'd be considered to be at least an A-tier skill in terms of density clearing with that change, because it already can clear players 8 with decent effectiveness, and now it's probably going to hit insanely hard, especially with Atmas. So yeah, Strafe's going to be sick. Unfortunately, the Hustle got nerfed to the point to where multi-shot isn't going to be hitting 7 frame with Wind Force without a ton of attack speed still. But Strafe's looking really good. And multi-shot is still stronger than it was, but yeah, I mean, Strafe is definitely where the fun is at, in my opinion, for sure. Cold Mastery is now applied. Okay, so this is definitely one of the things in my top 10, besides, the other thing in my top 10, which is help out underused builds, which I feel like they're doing pretty well on in this patch. This is the one of Nerf Blizzard. Well, here you go. Here's their solution. It's a very simple solution, and I guess it's in line with their other changes they made at the end of patch 2.5, which is they made lower resistant conviction 1/5 effectiveness after an immunity is broken, even from Sunder Charms. So now Cold Mastery works just like lower resistant conviction, and it's not special and doesn't allow you to set monsters to -100 with just Cold Mastery alone. This means that if you want to get full use out of a Cold Sunder on a Cold Sorc and you want to destroy cold immunities, you might actually need more negative enemy res than just Cold Mastery itself. Yeah, you'll still have to max Cold Mastery now for sure, but you can probably also go, like Doom, for instance, would be a really solid option now in a Cold Sorc, believe it or not. I know it's kind of strange to say the rune word Doom is going to actually see some use. I'm almost certain for Cold Sorceresses that are more serious about killing every monster in the game with really high effectiveness. So now the power level and the gear level you need on a Cold Sorceress is actually commensurate with the kind of power that you're already getting this season without any gear at all. So it's actually definitely a fair change. Blizzard and Cold Master is still absurdly strong, especially against non-cold immunes. So Blizzard Sorc and Cold Sorc is now just regular OP like it was in LOD, instead of Ultra OP with the Cold Thunder term. So now it's just as OP as everything else is in that regard. Very cool change, very important change. I think this is very good. This means that people will only be playing Cold Sorcs throughout the entirety of the season. I think that's good. Maybe in the beginning still, like normal, but at least not through the entirety of the season. Druid. Fixed an underlying issue that caused the Druid's Shockwave skill to do an unintended amount of damage. Now, I think this is my least favorite thing they did in this patch. I don't know what everyone in my chat thinks or on YouTube thinks, but this is my personal least favorite thing. When the bug with concentration applying to hammers was discovered over 20 years ago, they just left it in the game because they realized people liked it and it worked. And it caused it, it created a new build. It was unintended, but it was a cool build, and some people can argue hammers do a little bit too much damage. Yeah, sure, maybe. But without that, it would have been pretty shit. No one would have ever played it. So you can argue that was a good thing. There's an unintended bug with Shockwave, and people might know about this bug that caused it to do roughly 9,000-10,000 damage. Now, you still had to be in bear form. You weren't very mobile, but at least you could do a lot of damage, and you'd have faster cast rate and all that stuff. And you could go around and kill stuff with Shockwave. Of course, you could also get, Decrepify from the Mercenary and everything else. And it was pretty decent. It wasn't good at clearing high player count, even with the unintended amount of damage. It cleared players 1 and players 3 pretty solid. And, of course, you were absurdly tanky on it and everything else, but I don't really think it was OP, though. No, I mean, it wasn't nearly as strong as the strongest skills in the game. But I guess instead of supporting that bug and supporting the damage on Shockwave, they decided to just remove it. So I guess, they said here they wanted to implement targeted changes in buffs for the Druid. I don't know, it's like they're like, well, we didn't want that to happen, so it can't happen. That's what this excuse is, basically. It's like, well, but people liked it, though. People liked it. And it wasn't OP, so I don't know. Whatever, Shockwave goes back to being a supportive skill for the Werebear builds. That's fine. It's still a great support skill early game. It's still a good support skill on the Maul Druid. But yeah, I don't know. Guess it no longer a damage dealing skill. They don't want it to be one like in PD2, I guess. PD2, it's a really strong skill, actually. Interesting. That's not my favorite thing, though. I kind of wish they would just support it and just integrate it into the code better, maybe. Could be better. That's fine, though. Apparently there's some problems where, bosses and super uniques wouldn't drop items that they should be able to drop because the area was terrorized. They're supposed to have their treasure class restrictions lifted, but they weren't. So, yeah, guess they fixed them. That's good. And fixed some other issues as well. Controllers, nobody cares about controllers. Nobody uses that crap anyway, right? No one uses a controller. Alright. Alright, so there are a lot of bug fixes here as well, so there's just a lot of a lot of bug fix type things here, which is kind of nice. I like some of these bug fixes indeed. They talk about, you know, single player modding, you know, making sure to fix how to fix your mods. I don't know how to controller. Yeah, I don't either. Well, actually I do, but you know, I don't care to controller this game. The only bug fix I would say that's kind of interesting, just as the last thing to kind of go over here, is this particular one here. Fixed an issue where the shared stash could exceed the memory limit. Some of you guys might remember a video made by Cooley talking about this. Cooley made a video about it. He didn't discover it. He made a video about this and talking about how items could potentially be duped by exceeding the memory limit of the shared stash. This, I believe, may be I know I'm kind of going out on a limb here, maybe a very undercover, kind of low-key dupe glitch patch, bug fix here. They don't say that's what it is, but it very much could be. There's been speculation that if a dupe does exist, and there's some evidence there may be a dupe that exists, then it could be something to do with the shared stash exceeding the memory limit. So that may fix that? I don't know. Of course, it also, I mean, they only mentioned the part about causing people's items in their inventory or stash to be deleted, but there's been theories that it could also be used to dupe certain items. Of course, there's some people that may know the absolute truth about that and maybe getting absolutely rich off of it, but maybe that's no longer the case. Alright, at any rate, it's very interesting. Very interesting stuff. Lovely patch notes. Honestly, really hitting on two of those major top 10 ways that I would personally improve D2R. They even are cleaning up TZs a bit. I mean, they're not making it really like, terrifying or anything, as I think maybe they should, but you know, they're not like increasing their difficulty or anything. I wouldn't mind that, but it's okay if they're not. They're cleaning that stuff up. They're, you know, they nerfed Blizzard Sorc at least a little bit. It's now regular OP and not super OP, so I'll take it. And also, they really are helping out those druid builds and assassin builds even more, which I think is why they have a picture here of an assassin and a druid. I think they realized that was the major focus here, was trying to get those two expansion classes up to par. And honestly, assassins are going to be insane this season. I have a feeling it's going to be the most popular class for people to start transitioning into once they get geared up. And I feel like we're also going to see a lot more shape-shifting druids as well. But at any rate, it's going to be awesome. See you guys February 16th, 5 p.m. PT. You can always catch me on my stream, twitch.tv/DerekHumility. For all the action on Diablo 2, we do it all. We're going to be going hard at the beginning on hardcore, just farming gear and boosting levels and getting ready to make some of those awesome builds this season. I'll see you guys there. Let's get it.